Yo, what is going on today, everybody? This is Adam here with NFT Bros Podcast, and on today's episode, we have a special guest coming on, Champ T.
What's going on, guys? I'm Champ. Happy to be here today. I am an NFT project founder. I like to tweet a lot. I make YouTube videos sometimes. I'm somebody who's been in crypto since 2017 and who is heavily involved in the NFT space. So Adam, happy to be here today, man. Appreciate you having me.
Of course, man. Happy to have you here. Love what you've been doing in the space over the years that you've been building, and love to follow along and see what you're doing. So happy to have you here, and certainly this will be an episode that you'll want to listen to over a couple times if you're following along on YouTube or the podcast. There's going to be some gems hidden in here. Um, so to just kind of dive into it, I had a quick topic that I wanted to touch on that a lot of newcomers kind of don't get a good understanding of when they're getting into the space, and it might be like a little softball of a question, considering your experience. But what matters to you when you're looking at an NFT project to invest in?
Product, um, product, which is like super generic sounding, I know. But product can be like a number of things. It can be, it can be an experience even, right? Like with some projects, the product is the IP or is the community, right? But um, what I mean is that when I look at a project now in these conditions, right? Because I'm looking for very different things than I was whenever we were in a bull market, right? In a bull market, all I'm looking for is narratives, trends, um, things that I know are going to sort of meet this really low level of expectations that people are going to need to buy it, and I'm just trying to get there first. And I'm trying to counter trade emotions and sentiment and use that to take profit at the right time. Um, but when it comes to like what I'm looking for in a bear market, I'm looking for projects that are producing a real product or user experience. Um, because as there's lower levels of liquidity in the market, I think we begin to see the NFT space, more closely mirror like any other like actual business arena in the world. Um, and I think that we're going to see projects who are coming out and like actually displaying something as opposed to being like here is this Fiverr concept art that kind of looks like Breath of the Wild, give us $25 million, are going to be the winners, right? And I say that for a number of reasons, but the sort of most compelling one, perhaps, if you're looking to spend your money on an NFT, is um, knowing that these projects are able to produce revenue, right? Um, because, like I said, liquidity has dried up a lot. Royalties aren't producing enough money to run basically any sort of business unless you and if they are, it's probably not going to last that long, right? It's while people are excited about it. So, you know, projects that are built atop an actual business that is revenue producing. Like I think of guys like Steady Stack. I think of guys like some of these new projects that are like run by people who are legitimate business owners and know how to make money. Or alternatively, we've seen sort of like the VC raise meta. Like you can say what you want about that, but like to me, you know, it's a good indicator of like big money confidence in a team's ability to actually do something, and it means that um, assuming they have the right intentions, uh, they aren't going to have to just like soft rug us after 6 months because they run out of money. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
running a company is expensive, dude.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
you know, those are sort of some of the things that I think about right now. It changes all the time, but I think a lot about whether or not these projects are run by people who are like, are these people here to use NFTs as the vector to a meaningful user experience, or are these people selling something just because it's an NFT? And then also, can these people drive revenue, or alternatively, do they have funding? You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That's I I'm glad you brought that up because I saw your tweet the other day about how bullish you were on Steady Stack and that you're more bullish now than ever before on teams that can produce revenue outside of royalties because that's huge, man. I see it as a project founder. I know you see it as a project founder. Royalties aren't enough, and especially if you don't know what you're doing in a business, which is, I would say 80% of the people who are running
Oh
NFT
yeah, or
projects have
more,
likely never ran a business before, probably more. Yeah.
more.
Um, yeah, 95%. Um, they're not going to be around in 6 months, 9 months, 10 months, you know, and it's important to drive revenue. That was a big factor of building Just Cubes for us. I was like, okay, so in Web2, I run a Facebook advertising agency that manages subscription services for, um, you know, in the fashion industry. And that monthly recurring income is the sustainability aspect of the business that you don't have when you're just trying to advertise, right? You can advertise, but if your advertising funds run out, so does your revenue. But if you have that monthly recurring revenue and you continue to build on top of that, you won't run out. And you brought up VC investing, and I'm going for a raise here in probably the next 3 to 4 months um, for a project that I think has a lot of legs and can develop some really cool things in the space. We just don't have the funding for it now, but I know that it can produce the monthly recurring revenue that it needs to sustain itself and really build something cool. And that kind of leads me into question number two that I had today for you, which is where do you see the biggest opportunities for innovation in the NFT space in like the next 12 to 24 months?
Wow. Okay, let me not sound like a
And
dumbass.
no,
Um,
and feel free to like think on it for a second. We're not live, so I can cut out the thinking aspect.
no. Hmm.
One eternity later.
To be honest, like I think of it I think of it the same way that I think of any other, internet business arena, but sort of like try and, because I mentioned earlier, right? Like looking for projects who are kind of just using NFTs as the vector as opposed to, selling something because it's NFT. Um, but I think about that sort of like superimposed on what we know are like the sort of intrinsic benefits of leveraging blockchain technology, right? So in sort of like my case, right, or a number of projects cases, um NFTs just act as essentially a substitute for like a monthly subscription membership, right? But that's blockchain technology being cool for the consumer because instead of just sunken cost month over month, they buy it, use it, sell it back, right? Maybe they make money off of it, or maybe it goes down, but they at least recoup part of their investment. Um, so, part of my answer is that like the same way that folks are going to be able to, and I think are going to innovate across the internet in general, right? Like it's sort of like I said earlier, like I'm looking for legitimate businesses that are leveraging NFTs, but also uh, you can look at what like a Starbucks is doing, right? Or you see Disney moving into the storytelling NFTs meta. And what I'm really excited to see is like how large organizations and big companies that have a shit ton of customers are going to come out and leverage blockchain technology to create like meaningful customer experiences. What you see Starbucks doing is interesting because they're using NFTs in a way to sort of simultaneously target different demographics of customers, right? And whenever you look at NFTs and you hear smart people talk about them, you hear people talk about, LTV optimization, you hear people talk about ways to, like do event marketing, right? and actually, while we're on that subject, I think event marketing, I think is a really, really good example of how we're going to see this technology get used. When you think about like, I mean, actually, sorry, I probably don't even need to explain to you why that makes sense. Uh, but like, when it comes to just like improving consumer experience across the board in industries that you and I already interface with on like a daily or a weekly or a monthly basis, right? Because that's going to be, I think what really moves the needle as far as like getting people to quote unquote like adopt NFTs or like respect NFTs. Um, and my hope is that most of these uh, like companies that do this just don't even use the verbiage NFT at all, right? Like I'd rather that they don't even call it, like Starbucks calls it stamps, because they know people hate the word NFT because there's they don't even know why.
Right.
um and yeah, and it was funny, like I was listening to, I was scrolling like YouTube Shorts the other day. It was like a Gary V soundbite, and it was him talking about like, dude, like you shitting on NFTs is like just like your parents being afraid to put in their credit card info to a computer in the early 2000s, and it's like you're demonizing a technology that you don't even understand yet. Um, so hopefully some like meaningful consumer applications will come out and make people like these things without them sort of having like the like pushing them away before they use them, right? So if maybe we see like gamers are a really good example of people who would really benefit from this technology but fucking hate it. Um,
Yep.
but if we can have a really, really great free to play mobile or desktop game come out that integrates sort of behind the scenes NFT technology, and it's like, oh, by the way, that item, that you found in that, fucking chest or whatever from that 3-day quest that you did. Um, by the way, you can click, two buttons and sell that for quite a few real world dollars. By the way, that's powered by blockchain technology. By the way, maybe it's not as bad as you thought it was.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think about that a lot, and I also think about like just within the sort of little NFT bubble that we have. Um, I mean, there's certainly a lot of room for innovation and improvement. Um, but I don't know what it's going to look like, man. The space changes so fucking much. I know that it's going to
Yeah.
have to look sustainable, and that like I know that people have a much smaller appetite for just completely useless PFP rugs. And my hope is that we start to see more um, collections in sort of like the genre that I've made my bet on, and founded, which is essentially like tokenized access to legitimate subscription services. Um, how that's going to be done, I'm not totally sure. You see some projects coming out and opting for like the like sort of the recurring NFTs, right? Which I think is actually a fine model. Like maybe the NFTs last like they launch once every quarter. They're like 3-month passes, maybe like a year pass, something like that. Um, but I don't think that like the dude. What's a good example of just there's so many. Never mind. I'm not going to shit on any individual projects, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Like all the projects.
Yeah. No, I absolutely. I totally resonate with what you're saying there, and understand where you're coming from. And you brought up a point that will be on the podcast prior to this one launching, is Web 2, like big brands from Web 2 and big companies from Web 2 coming into the Web 3 space and creating that really, really good user experience like Starbucks is doing. They're not calling it an NFT, even though it is, right? Because it's a scary word. Like people don't understand the technology. You see big brands like Nike, they are essentially fixing their own supply chain issues with what they have done with Artifact. Because I have a friend who runs some shoe boutiques, and we had a conversation. He goes, dude, the fucking supply chain for shoes is absolutely a shit show. And so when you do something like a claimable NFT for a physical product, you cut down on your supply chain issues. Therefore, you don't have those future issues and the future money they have to put out to produce these things in mass quantities. Therefore, you can plan further ahead, knowing we don't have to have this giant capital allocation coming out and buying 80 million pairs of shoes or whatever the case may be, right?
Right.
Um, and she brought up a really good point with the user experience that she covered on the podcast yesterday, and it was the big brands that she's working with. They don't want to focus on generating a ton of revenue at first. They want to generate building trust in their consumer so that they have an understanding of the technology that they're using and it's not so daunting, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can go for those bigger asks and those bigger drops of like something more cool, like an exclusive membership or access to IRL events and things like that. And the event space was a topic that we brought up, and one that I'm diving into personally with a project that we're launching here pretty soon.
Mm.
It's a IRL product that will be integrated into events, and we're just going to go super super heavy on the event side and providing that IRL like experience during these events,
Mm-hmm.
and a take home item that you can show off, put on the shelf, and have to really, I guess, tie that experience to that event and take it home with you, right? Something like a piece of merch, but a little bit different. So yeah, the user experience is definitely on the top of these big brands' minds when it comes to getting into the NFT space, and I'm glad that they are looking at it that way, because people aren't trusting of Web3 enough, just because the only clickbait stuff they see is either people losing a shitload of money or getting scammed. That's what's promoted, because that's the narrative to keep people's money in Web2 when these new big companies aren't in Web3 yet, right? So yeah, I'm glad you brought that those points up.
Yeah, man. It's funny. I never really thought about it that way. Like the Web 2 conglomerates conspiring against Web 3 stealing their money. I'm sure that is happening to a degree. Yeah, no, the event stuff is really interesting. That's cool to hear that you're actually already thinking about that too.
Yeah, and I think I can tell you a little bit more about it after the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
because we're still in the launch phase. Um, but I think it's really cool, and we're trying to figure out, because it's a heavily IRL deliverable product and experience. We want to also try and figure out how we can deliver that experience across the board in the metaverse and or online in some way, so that you don't have to travel to an event to have this experience. You don't have to claim your item and have it shipped to you for your experience, right? We want to think of a way to be able to add experiences online, because that's where everything's going, right? Everybody is building a meta, right? Microsoft has been working on one for like 6 or 7 years, right? Facebook has literally changed their name to Meta. So we want to try and focus on that aspect as well, and cater to those online events or these online conferences that are happening in the metaverse, or the concerts in the sandbox, things like that. We really want to try and figure out how to incorporate that in our roadmap for this coming project that we're doing.
Well, very cool. I'm looking forward to hearing some more about that whenever we're not live on air, man.
Yeah, I'll make sure to tell you more about that. Well, dude, honestly, that was literally all the questions that I had prepared for today's podcast. Um, so, I mean, unless there's something you want to talk about, I like to hand the mic over to you and let you have a little bit of a spotlight and tell everybody listening what you guys are doing. If there's anything new coming to Champs Pass, and give you the spotlight
Thanks,
to kind
man.
of show off what you're doing.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Appreciate it. But yeah, so we are working on a number of things. I suppose if you're listening and you are, you know, new to who I am, or you're not familiar at all with what I do, like I said earlier, I am the founder of an NFT project called ChampsOnly. We were one of the earlier, you know, quote unquote alpha groups, but have certainly grown to be more than that over the past 7 or 8 months. It's turned into a group that is really, really primarily focused on optimizing the Web3 experience. And what I mean by that is that whether you are somebody who doesn't know that much about trading NFTs but wants to get really good at it, or somebody who already does it but you want to optimize your trading, if you want to, you know, get really good at trading crypto and do that on a daily basis, if you want to learn how to build in the NFT space, or you are already a builder and you're trying to find more connections and you're really just sort of trying to build your brand in the NFT space, if you want to get Web3 jobs, right? All these things that sort of define the NFT space as it is right now, we try and provide an experience that puts you in the position to best do all of those things. So from, you know, like a content perspective, we put out a really, really high cadence and quality level of calls on the market every single day. I have a large team of NFT callers and crypto callers that are just putting out bangers every single day. At what I believe is probably one of the highest cadences, if not the highest cadence in the space. Of course, a bunch of whitelist partnerships with all the, you know, the best projects in the space, just because, you know, we can sort of leverage our reputation at this point. We've been around for a while. I suppose we're always doing that, though. A number of software tools you get free access to, you know, free IC tools, leading tools in the space. We have a staking portal. You get access to a daily staking token you can spend to access more tools, right? Customized printout, custom Twitter banners. We have sort of a gamified social aspect as well by Discord Nitro, a bunch of shit in the Discord. The point is, right, like, an alpha community, but also a community designed to just optimize the Web3 experience. We're currently working on what I think is going to really kind of change the face of the NFT alpha caller space. I think that one of the most legitimate complaints and gripes with alpha groups over the past 6 months has to do with sort of the democratization of data, and, you know, calls, chats, yada yada, no longer being that exclusive. You know, you see these mirror passes, etc. We're about to go live in beta in like probably like 10 days with something that is, I suppose without saying exactly what it is, really designed to sort of put the power back in the hands of those who are delivering the calls or the information, and give us jurisdiction over keeping that information from being spread around to those who don't quite literally hold our NFT. Also empower the holder to really deeply and legitimately customize their experience, because we put out a lot of content, right? And good alpha groups put out content on a lot of different niches of the NFT and the crypto space, but everybody has different interests and should be able to customize that experience with their budget and with, you know, what is interesting to them. So going to really empower the user there too. So go live with something cool and exclusive to our holders here this month that I think is going to get a lot of people excited. And then we'll hopefully just end up being white labeled and go to market for a bunch of alpha groups, which is cool because one, it'll be another sort of business avenue for us. You know, it's talking about sustainability, but two, I think is going to sort of champion and hopefully sort of defend and empower the alpha group space as a whole, right? It's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart that I was like one of the early founders for, right? But, you know, consistency is like the name of the game moving forward, and just providing as much value to our holders as possible, right? And there are always sort of new flavors of the week or the month or whatever, but I always just want to be consistent and be present and like just be providing as much value as possible at the end of the day. And you know, I want to be able to support that with data. We run, you know, essentially monthly data analysis on using a couple models on what sort of average profit would be if you took one of every call on the server, and those numbers continue to be pretty impressive. So
I saw
uh,
that tweet. I think it was like yesterday that you put out on Champs Only Pass Twitter. It's like 14 ETH in profit or something, right?
yep, and it's gonna keep going, man. It's gonna keep fucking going. So
Oh yeah.
uh, that's what I do. Yeah, oh, and then sorry, I also run a podcast with K Money, and then I also run a YouTube channel, and then I also tweet a lot. So I don't know. I do a number of things. I consult
Yep.
projects. I'm a Web3 businessman. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. Kind of does like a little bit here and there,
Yeah,
kind of involved in
exactly.
the NFT space, like a little bit. So
Exactly.
if you
Exactly.
guys enjoyed this episode at all, please drop a like on the YouTube, drop a subscribe, give us some stars on the podcast, and go follow my boy. Give him some love. Go pick up a Champ Pass if that's what you want. I have been considering picking up one. I've been watching. I think I'm going to grab one probably right after this. To be quite honest with you, um, I'm literally not even joking. I've been like looking over the past couple of weeks, and with that news coming out, I have an idea of what you guys are doing, and I'm excited for what's coming out. So I think
Be happy to
there's
have you be a community member, man. I appreciate it.
I
Thanks for championing me. Thanks for having me on.
hell yeah, absolutely, brother. Thank you for coming on. And if you guys enjoyed the podcast, give my boy a follow. He's doing some awesome stuff in the space.
And
All
smash
right.
that like button, baby.
Yeah. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
Cool. Peace.